I don't find a lot of people that have given this much thought to why, and I really appreciate that about you. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my next video. Today, we're going to meet Julia. She has a fantastic channel, and I think you are going to love, love, love this interview. It's just really good. So, welcome, Julia.
Thank you, Bob. Hi, glad to be here. It's an honor.
And what kind of rig are
Yeah,
you in?
I'm in a 2500 Dodge van. It's a 96.
Exactly what drove you, motivated you, inspired you to move into a van?
So I grew up in Northern California and I grew up around the Grateful Dead, which was a total traveling community of house vehicles. And these people were traveling around to follow the Grateful Dead. And I actually have a little picture, if I can throw it up here real quick, that I pulled out to show you. And hopefully you can see right there are a line of school bus houses. And you can't see them. I mean, this picture's from about 1986, but those are brightly colored houses. One is the purple eggplant, one's called Imagine, and that's a Grateful Dead parking lot. And so growing up around this and being part of the Grateful Dead, I was totally witness to all of these beautifully transformed house vehicles. So really, it's no surprise that I would end up in a van, for one, but for two, it was just a huge inspiration about what could be done. And again, back then it wasn't stealthy. I mean, multicolor, and these vehicles were beautiful, Bob. Italian tile, custom woodwork on the inside. I've seen buses with stained glass and additions on the top. Just really beautiful rigs. And I myself lived in a school bus for about 1 year in college on a piece of land with other school buses, and they were all done up and different. So I really come from a background where I was lucky to be privy to this type of lifestyle that's going on in Northern California, and coming out of the hippie era of the 60s. But this was the 80s and it was going strong. And then I probably should mention that I traveled with the band Widespread Panic for about 8 years, traveling in my truck with a shell. And I made my handmade goods and sold them just like they did on Grateful Dead tour. So I did a lot of traveling before van life. Van life really started in 2014 when I was in an apartment. I had settled down, I had a million house cleaning jobs and my crafting business, and I just couldn't save anything. And I was just so worried about my future and not having enough money. And I was just ready to do it. And that's when I was just ready to do it. So I sold a bunch of stuff and I jumped into my truck with my dog, Pai Mei dog, and we took off. And it was a massive failure to begin with. And so I crawled back home to Charleston and sort of like tried to figure out what to do. Within a couple months, I had my first van. I jumped in and out of the van for about a year. Then I had a studio for a year. Then, Bob, in 2016, July, I jumped into my second van, and that was the beginning of my van life. And I've been in a van ever since. I'm now in my third van, but it's been over 4 years. Again, the money thing, I really just wanted to try and get on my feet. And I really already have been so independent my whole life, and sort of a weirdo and a nomad. It wasn't that much of a leap to do that. But I was really, the biggest fear and the biggest thing was really, are you really going to jump into this full time and be a road artist? I mean, are you going to be who you really are? Or are you going to keep hiding out and trying to make it over here in a way that I wasn't really making it? And real quick, another component of this was personal growth. I moved into my van and into van life to be able to take the time, by working less and having less bills, I could take more time with myself to process some of my basically childhood trauma and my dysfunctional patterns that were making it impossible for me to have a good, abundant life. And van life has allowed me to really do a lot of that. And so I've taken this big journey to get back to California. That was a big part of it too, to be able to pare everything down to a van and make this trip, this epic journey back to my homeland of California, which I was away from for decades.
You were just a born nomad. It sounds like that urge was just and having it when you grew up around you, of course, that really
Yeah.
makes it even more so. But you were just born to be a nomad. Now, there's two kinds of ways to looking at moving into a van. You're moving towards something you want, and I think that's what I'm hearing from you now. This is a new life, growth, whatever the future can bring to you. But there's also a sense of, for many of us, a rejection of the past and the traditional world, kind of a dropping out of the old world and embracing a new world. So in a sense, were you dropping out, do you think?
Yeah, it's funny, that term dropping out, because that comes from that whole heritage of the 60s and everything too. And yes, in a big giant way, Bob, I am totally dropping out. I mean, I have a lot to say about how I think our system is really not working now. And particularly, I feel that and I think it's very obvious, it's anti-nature. It's the cost of whatever progress we're doing now is really the death of and the dysfunction of these ecological systems that keep us alive. I mean, this is the biggest thing for me that I feel like I'm dropping out of. It's not like I'm out there living on a piece of land growing my own food. I mean, I kind of like to do that. That might be the final step of this. But in a really big way and on a positive way of looking at it is what I like to say, we're dropping in. We're dropping into this other lifestyle. We're dropping in and creating sort of an alternative to that sort of broken system, or at least many aspects of it that really aren't working for us. And we can see that a lot in the current things going on, how quickly things can fall apart.
The environment and nature is a huge part of why I do everything I do and why I promote it. And yet, it makes people angry, and people don't want to hear it, and they don't want to be preached to. And so I don't bring it up. So I only emphasize the positive, the better quality of life you can have, and how
Yeah.
much cheaper you can live. And if you don't have much money, you can live really, really well on very little money. Um, but that's to me, that's the icing on the cake. The cake is the future generations have hope because
Future,
we're making these decisions
right?
selfishly, but we're making these decisions to live on the planet better.
And I think a big part of what we're all going through and the direction we've gone is to step away from our natural side and our humanity. What really makes us human, so much of that is our natural selves, our relationship with the natural world. And this is sort of what's been lost. It's just such a huge part of why I'm doing what I'm doing and the way I do it. And I take the risks that I need to because I just want to be closer with that. And I just want to pull away from my role in helping disturb the natural system further. I mean, not, that's another thing people get upset about. It's like, oh, well, you aren't perfect. You're in a gas guzzling vehicle. It's like, yeah, that's right. I'm not perfect. I don't think we're meant to be, but we do what we can.
So you've mentioned money several times, and that's, of course, as long as we're living in this country at this time, you got to have money. You just can't function or live without it. So
Yes.
how are you earning money now?
So I make recycled clothing or upcycled clothing, which means I take used clothing and I transform it. A lot of times it's patchwork, and then I sell it as new, unique, one of a kind clothing. And I did that back in the day when I was traveling. So I just brought that online. Once I started on eBay, and then I jumped to Etsy.com, which is made up of all handmade makers as well as vintage. And so I now sell my goods online. The store you just saw was actually my hat store, so I crochet hats as well. So I have two different stores, upcycled clothing and hats. The hat store is called Good Vibe Hats. The upcycled clothing store is called California Patchwork. They're both on Etsy.com. That's how I've been making my money for years, but I've always had other income streams as well. One of them when I was settled, and sometimes even now I do house cleaning. And then what I'm developing now is more income streams, passive income streams, such as tutorials about how to make the clothing I've been making for years. Because I don't have power in my van, I can't sew in here. And that can be something for the future, perhaps a bigger vehicle. But I need to rent temporary places to do that. And I've rented all different kinds of weird places. So I've rented everything from a motel room to a campsite to even a storage unit once in Asheville, North Carolina, where all of these different people had their setups in these different storage units. And people were like, "You're in a storage unit?" I was like, "Yeah, but there's a woodworker over there, a glass blower, a t-shirt maker, there's a mechanic shop." So it was this weird storage facility where you could set up your little shop in there. I even did that there. So that's basically how I make my money. This channel doesn't really support me. It provides a teeny bit, but as it grows, I hope that it will more. And the good thing about van life is, I mean, it's where I can always be more frugal. And so it's easier to get by even when less is coming in.
We talked earlier about what other people think and how that can be really controlling. And you said you determined not to allow other people's thoughts about you to control you. Do you have any hints for our audience? And I think that's a big deal to a lot of people who are thinking about becoming nomad. So, do you have any hints or tips how people can overcome what their fear of what people think?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing to recognize, and that helps a lot, is to realize we're not fearing what people think. We're fearing what we think they think. And so when you realize it's all in your own head, really, it's really a mind, it's a screwball mind thing. It's like, it's not what they think. We're imagining what they think. And so the first thing to do is to realize that and go, yeah, I have no idea what they really think. It's not even my business. My business is what I think. And then the other is just, you sort of just get in the comfort of it. At some point, you realize I'm a van dweller or I'm a nomad. And you just sort of get comfortable with it and accept it. So, yeah, I guess that's my second piece of advice.
So, what have been your big challenges as a nomad?
So the biggest thing I would say is my second van it wasn't an undependable vehicle, but I would say it never really broke down on me, but I always thought it was going to. So having an undependable vehicle that you're worried about all the time is no way to live. And related to that, you've always got to have some kind of savings for mechanical repairs. And on that note, a breaking down van and having to stop and get mechanical repairs, I'd say is probably one of the biggest, non-philosophical sort of practical challenges with van life. Is it's your entire home. So if it breaks down and you never know where that's going to happen or what kind of mechanics are going to be around, that's one of the biggest challenges. But the ongoing worry about if my van's going to break down, that was really challenging for me with my last van and really caused a lot of personal frustration and anxiety that didn't allow me to enjoy my van life as much as I am now, where I feel a little bit more secure. But also, I've always had dogs in my van, and a dog can be quite a challenge. I had my beautiful Paime dog actually die while I was living in my second van, and we were staying at a friend's at the time, so that was lucky. It didn't happen right in the van one morning. That was devastating. And then I rescued another dog, Bambi, off the side of the road in Tennessee on my way to California. And that's been a challenge too. She got pregnant in the van. I had to deal with this whole possibility of having, here I rescued this dog to save a dog, and now she gets pregnant and she's going to create 6 more stray dogs in the van. And, I didn't have a lot of money, and that was a real challenge.
So you've really had a nomadic pull your whole life. But you've been very specifically a nomad for the last 4 or 5 years, you would say?
I'd say 4.5 years full time, and then that year before jumping in and out of that first van.
So how has that changed you? How are you different?
I guess the most important thing that I'm really happy about and really proud of is I've begun to really step out of this victim mode that I was in and really step into who I really am. I'm really in that process right now, Bob. And this is the biggest thing that's been happening for me in my van life, and what's changed is that I'm really growing. And it really took me sort of dropping out, pulling away, because I feel like I was trying to be something that I wasn't. And I always felt like I couldn't do it on my own and all of these things. So because that victim mentality. And so what's changed the most is I'm really stepping into who I really am. And that's the most amazing part about it. And then really sort of learning, okay, what can I do to really continue to be independent economically so that I can really be in charge of my future? So what's changing there is I feel like I'm starting to pull that together better than I ever have in my life. And I knew that this whole victim mentality and this like fearful state that I was in and sort of just giving into the system and doing the job the way that I was supposed to, because that was just the easiest, less scary way to do it, that I I wasn't successful. It didn't matter how much I worked or how well I played the game. I was just never going to be successful as long as I had this victim mentality. Moving into a van has allowed me the time to face a lot of this stuff, face the fear of being weird and different, because I really am. They're just words, but I really do like to have this alternative sort of independent lifestyle, and I'm stepping into that like for real. And
I have a little different take on it. I see the traditional life that you tried to adopt and didn't and failed at. I see that as the weird,
oh yeah,
the
that's right.
bizarre, the bizarro world. And now you're stepping
It is.
into the healthy, normal, human, truly human world. That's how I like to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I'm starting to take care of my own personal needs more.
After all this time, these being weird, being a nomad, what's your advice for our listeners? People who are listening and thinking, boy, that sounds good to me. I'd like to do that. What's your advice?
So my first piece of advice is don't fear. What you'll do is if you take the leap, the universe will support you. But if you take the leap to do this because you really want to do it, but you're fearful, you will rise to the occasion. See, you'll rise to the occasion and you'll find parts in yourself that you didn't know existed and you didn't know you were capable of this. And so it'll cause you really to grow by facing that fear, and you will be able to do it. So don't fear. And it's not scary out here. It's not. I mean, all of these doors lock, everything's locked up. I can drive away from anything scary anytime I want. My second piece of advice, and this comes from personal experiences, don't get stuck. So it's very easy to move into a vehicle and then stay in your own little town or even your own little area. My third piece of advice is get ready to know yourself. Because by doing this, you're going to find you have a lot of time with yourself and you get to know yourself better. And then you sort of find what you really like and what you don't like. So, yeah.
That is excellent advice.
Thanks, Bob.
So thank you so much, Julia, for sharing your home and your story with us. I just really enjoyed talking about these things. I don't find a lot of people that have given this much thought to why, and I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Folks, now we didn't do a tour, as you saw. She'll send in a video tour that she does of her vehicle, and so stay tuned for that. You want to make sure you watch the tour where she takes you through the nuts and bolts and practicalities of her life, and I think you'll really get a lot out of that too. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you got anything out of it, like us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up button, and we'll